Hello everyone, my name is Sarafi and I'm happy to have you all with me. And today I wanted to talk about hand traps in Duel Links and how this is going to affect the game moving forward. So, Duel Links has always had hand traps. They've always had cards that you could activate from the hand as a quick effect in response to one of your opponent's cards. We got Skullmeister really early. It's been super cheap for a long time. And DD Crow came out when Zexal came out, so both those cards have been in the game for several years at this point. But those cards were always kind of like meta relevant. You know, they had to be there had to be certain cards in the meta that you really cared about playing, and it was a long stretch of time when I was in the game where DD Crow wasn't played at all. And then they released Effect Veiler in the Dimension box, and Effect Veiler is different than DD Crow or Skullmeister. It's a card that is just generically good and can be used against a wide variety of decks. The primary reason we don't see Effect Veiler seeing play right now is because it's not very good against Blue Eyes, and it's also not very good against Shiranui. It's better to DD Crow than Effect Veiler Shiranui in most cases. So we just came out of a Shiranui Blue Eyes meta, and right now the meta is still being figured out. It's probable that with all the Phantom Knights players running around, everyone's going to switch to Artifact Lancia, which is completely fine. Artifact Lancia is a good card. But we also got the new Ghost Warner card printed, which is basically an Effect Veiler, but it's a zombie tuner, and that's an indication to me that we're going to get all of the level 3 tuner hand trap characters that are 0 attack points, 800 defense points. So that means Ghost Ogre, it means the Cherries card, it means that we're going to get Ash Blossom, it means that we're going to get Ghost Bell. As much as the TCG crowd doesn't like to admit it, this is absolutely an OCG game. We can tell this because our skills get mistranslated all the time, because voice lines for characters are given fully in Japanese, but they're barely written out in English. Like, if you listen to Nail has his full 6-sentence chant when he summons Yggdrago in Japanese, but it's only like one line in English, so they really don't care about their outside market. The TCG does not control this game, even if the cards are printed in English. So with that in mind, we are most likely going to get Max C at some point as well. We have not gotten Dragoon. No matter, they push Dark Magician all the time, we still have not gotten Dragoon, and that is an indication that we're going to be following the OCG ban list pretty heavily. When Orcus came out, I believe Orcus Harpor was still limited to 1, and we got Orcus Harpor at 3. You know, Dragoon has not come yet, so we are probably going to get Max C. It's probably going to be fine. And it's important to note that Konami has set a precedent. Now they've released 2 very powerful hand traps, Effect Veiler and Ghost Warner, at Unlimited. So they are making it very clear that back row, you can't play multiple copies of back row, but you can play as many hand traps as you want. And that means that we're transitioning now into the hand trap meta. We're going to be moving away from using so much back row, which makes every piece of back row that comes out a little bit less enticing to invest in, especially if that card is limited to 3. Ice Dragon's Prison, still a very good card. You should definitely have it. And, you know, if you want to get 3 copies of it, I don't blame you. I currently only have 1. But when Konami releases a card like Ghost Bell, which literally just turns off the graveyard, or they release a card like Ash Blossom, which stops you from special summoning from the deck, and that card is unlimited, and you can play it with other cards like Effect Veiler and Ghost Bell, then you're going to be seeing a lot more people relying on hand traps than they are relying on trap cards, especially since you can use them if you're going second against a player who's going first. So, hand traps, I need to tell you, I think they're going to be more and less effective in this game than they are in the real game. Part of the reason why hand traps see so much play in the real game is because there are so many one-card combos. And while skills do try and emulate one-card combos pretty heavily, they aren't always that effective at it, and a lot of decks don't have a skill that makes up for their brickiness. We don't have all that much search in the game yet. There are some decks that can pop off quite heavily, like Live Twins, but not every deck can do this. So we're going to have to see like a big swell of power creep, either in skills like we're seeing right now, or in the cards that we get, to allow for this hand trap focused meta. But once that happens, I think hand traps are going to be much more devastating. Yes, you do have fewer cards in your hand after you use a hand trap to build your board and to win the game. But your opponent also, if they're playing hand traps, has fewer ways to recover if you stop one of their cards with a card like Ash Blossom. And it's important to note, a lot of people are going to reply to this and say, you only have one less card, doesn't matter. That's not true. We do only have one less card in the hand, but we have 7 less cards in the extra deck. That's important to note. We have 7 fewer cards in the extra deck than we do in the real game, which means that it's much harder for you to bait a card like Ash Blossom, which can literally stop one of your cards in its tracks. When you're making an extra deck monster that, your extra deck space is already by design almost all cards that you need. Do you really have cards in your extra deck that you don't play ever? Usually you might have like a Phoenix, but you'll probably get rid of the Phoenix when we stop seeing so much back row. So there aren't going to be too many cards that you can just summon and then say, I don't care if this card's effect resolves, I just want you to hand trap it. And so, especially when you're talking about a card like Ghost Spell, which literally stops you from special summoning from the graveyard, that can stop a lot of decks right away. Like, DD Crow is essentially probably going to be completely replaced by Ghost Spell, and it should. Ghost Spell is way better than DD Crow. But when you have Ghost Spell, you have Ghost Warner, you have Effect Veiler, we're probably going to get Ghost Ogre, which destroys a card that activates its effect. That's very disruptive. It doesn't negate the effect, but it destroys a card, whereas all the other cards just negate effects. So that card's going to be crazy. We're going to get cards like the one where we just gain life points every time a monster is special summoned. Like, it's just going to be a situation where you are really, depending on which cards you draw, going to be in a very powerful position. And if you are playing a deck that has 6 hand traps and 14 cards, and 20 cards, then there's a good chance that you brick. Like, if you open 3 hand traps and 2 of them are the same card, you're going to have to pray that that last card enables a skill or does something if you're going first. If you're going second, you'll have another card in your hand, so maybe you'll be able to pop off. But that's kind of what we're looking at, right? And we do have that right now. There are a lot of situations where you simply can't play the game because you brick on like 3 back row, but at least the back row is more disruptive. Like, a card like Ash Blossom will allow you to prevent your opponent from building a board in the first place, but it won't save you if your opponent manages to build the board anyway. Whereas a card like Crackdown can literally just stop your opponent and just like protect you for several turns. So there are going to be some people who cling to the back row meta, just like there are people who are resisting the Kaiju meta right now. But it's here and you have to acknowledge it. So that's why I'm making this video, guys. When these other hand trap cards come out, like Ghost Spell, like Ash Blossom, read the card. You're going to see that it's powerful. Trust it when people say that these cards are going to see play, that they're going to be meta. Grab 3 copies and put them in your deck. Just experiment with them, see how they play. You're going to find that a lot of these cards are going to be taking the place of cards like Compulsory Evacuation Device, and you're going to be less excited to see a card like Torrential Tribute come out. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Let me know in the comments what you think about hand traps and about the changes that are happening to Duel Links, because the power creep has been insane lately. My name is Sarafi, and I was thrilled to have all of you with me.